Hello, friend. If you've ever felt stuck, uncertain, or wondered, how do I move forward from here? You're not alone. Welcome to Rooted and Resilient, the podcast that explores how we can apply the timeless wisdom of the Bible to our lives today. I'm Jennifer Carter, and I know what it's like to live through challenging times, face change, loss, and seasons of waiting. But as a woman who's been there, I also know that God can use each and every season of our lives for His purposes and our good. In this podcast, we'll share insights and encouragement that we can apply to our unique journeys as women. We'll explore how the Bible speaks to the struggles we as women face today. It's time to move from fear to faith, from feeling stuck to walking boldly and into God's calling on our lives. I believe your best years are not behind you, but ahead of you. So take a deep breath, grab a cuppa, and let's dive into today's episode, because God isn't done with your story yet. So why is it that your church never talks about the 93 women named in the Bible? I was recently reading Invisible Women by Caroline Criado Perez. It's a brilliant book. I highly recommend it. And it opened my eyes to just how, from workplace policies to medical research, so much of our world is created by men and designed with men in mind, often at the expense of women's needs. Even today, women's stories are often told through a narrow lens. Reese Witherspoon grew frustrated reading movie scripts where the female characters lacked depth or agency, often because they were written from a male perspective. So she founded a company to change that, focusing on authentic, strong female characters. And the success of Wild and Gone Girl proves that audiences are eager to hear stories where women have more than just a supporting role in someone else's story. Jesus was pretty revolutionary in his treatment of women, allowing them to be disciples and witnesses to the resurrection, something unheard of in that day. Paul recognized women like Phoebe as leaders in the early church. Unfortunately, this cultural bias towards downplaying women's contributions and overlooking women's roles and stories can creep into the church too. It's the only reason I can think of to explain why you've never heard some of these amazing women's stories. Why aren't their stories more widely shared? After all, they reveal a God who values women, who sees them as far more than supporting characters. There are 93 women named in the Bible. I haven't counted them myself, but ChatGPT assures me that this is true. And there are many more who are mentioned but not named. But most of our churches only ever talk about a handful of them. Why is that, and what are we missing when we overlook these women's stories? Perhaps we should call this podcast season Invisible Women of the Bible. So today we're looking at some of these forgotten women of the Bible, because their stories might just change how you see your own. Throughout the pages of our Bibles, there are stories of women who faced overwhelming challenges, devastating losses, who wrestled with feeling unseen. They faced many of the same fears, doubts, and challenges that we do today. You've probably only heard of a handful of them, yet their stories are in the pages of your Bible for a reason. Think about it. When you go to a women's event at church, don't you connect so much more deeply with female speakers? Their stories and insights resonate because they get it as women. It's the same when we dig into the stories of women in the Bible. They've experienced many of the same struggles we face today, and there's so many lessons we can learn from them. So, what women have you heard about in church? I'm guessing Mary, Martha, Esther, Ruth, Eve, possibly even Sarah. But who are the women we've never heard about? What about Jael, who drove a tent peg through an enemy's head? Or Deborah, the courageous leader, prophetess and judge? I can honestly say I've never heard Deborah preached about, and she's such an incredible woman and leader. These stories are so powerful and relevant, but they're rarely told. Okay, so let's take a look at the story of Ruth, Naomi and Boaz. You've probably heard that preached about, but as a love story. But it is so much more. It's about determination, resilience and courage. Ruth left everything she knew to follow her mother-in-law Naomi to a foreign country. They faced poverty and hardship, yet their story is a testament to how God uses every situation for good, even when it seems hopeless. God took this homeless migrant woman and wove her into his story. And you may well know that Ruth is featured in the lineage of Jesus. There are so many stories of women who faced incredible challenges with great wisdom and faith. Jochebed, Moses' mother, defied the order of a king to save her son. Tamar was widowed and cleverly secured her rights in a society where women were second-class citizens. Hagar found hope in the desert when she'd been cast off and was without hope. Abigail married a foolish man. Her story could have ended in tragedy. When her husband, Nabal, offended King David, she knew she had to act fast, and without a second thought, she gathered a generous gift and rode out to meet David, humbled herself before him and pled for mercy. Her incredible wisdom and boldness diffused David's anger and saved her entire household from destruction. Perhaps you've heard of the Shunammite woman. She was a wealthy woman who showed extravagant hospitality to the prophet Elisha. She even built a room for him in her home. When Elisha wanted to repay her, she told him she was happy with her life, but he noticed she was childless and he prophesied she would have a son. And she did. But years later, her son died suddenly. She immediately sought out Elisha, who prayed and laid his hands on the boy, and God brought him back to life. These women show us that strong faith, courage, and perseverance are for women at every age and stage. Their stories can remind us that God is always at work, even when, and especially when, we can't see the next chapter. As a woman who's faced my share of heartache, divorce, an empty nest, health battles, you name it, I get it. There have been seasons when I've wondered if God really cares, if he really sees me, knows me, and cares about the burdens I'm carrying. That's why I believe the stories of these invisible women are so important for us to hear. They can remind us that our experiences aren't new, that women since the beginning of time have faced hardships and felt unseen. But more importantly, they show us a God who sees us and wants to weave our stories, even the painful and difficult parts, into his bigger story. So often our pain as women is overlooked. Our worth is minimized. But these stories tell us that we matter to God. That our stories, even the parts we want to hide away, can be woven into something beautiful by God. These Bible women faced so much. Maybe you're facing some of those same giants too. If so, I pray that as you listen to their stories, you will find hope, healing, and encouragement. And you'll know that the God who saw them sees you too. So over the next few episodes, we're going to dive into the lives of some of these Bible women and bring them out of the shadows. We'll listen to and learn from their stories. And if you're in a season where you're really struggling with purpose, wondering what the next step forward is, I want to remind you that God is a God who specializes in bringing hope where there's no hope, healing where there's brokenness, and he delights in writing new chapters just when you thought your story was over. He's the only one who can take the tangled threads of our lives, the disappointments, the losses, mistakes and brokenness, and create something beautiful, not despite our brokenness, but through it. These women, hidden in the pages of your Bible, have so much to teach us about walking with God in every chapter of our lives, especially when the path ahead is unclear and we desperately need fresh wisdom and new perspective. So next time, we'll be diving into the story of Ruth and Naomi, and we'll discover that the book of Ruth is so much more than just a love story. So if you're at a crossroads of facing uncertainty or are wondering how to move forward, this one's for you. Their story is all about finding faith and courage to step into an unknown future with God, something I think many of us can relate to in this current season of life. Thank you so much for joining me today. If this episode encouraged you, I'd love you to hit subscribe or leave a quick review. It helps more women find us and find encouragement. You can find my books and devotionals on Amazon or at jennifercarterbooks.com. And remember, no matter what you've been through, God is at work in your life restoring what's been lost, and writing a better story than you can imagine.